and we're up and running. It is a cold and somewhat frosty segue from Christmas to New Year's here. I think it's probably 1 or 2 degrees outside. I was out running around this morning having fun, and we are getting ready for the advance into 2018. So, what are your thoughts, Barrett, on 2017 now that we have kind of finished it up?
Well, I would say it was a wild ride. I mean, I definitely had my own personal ups and downs in this past year. But overall, I would give it a thumbs up, at least for my personal experience. I know that the world in general has kind of had a rough go of it. So, but I think that, that's kind of the work, right? Can we find equanimity even in times of turbulence? And the world lately has been giving us a lot of chance to practice that.
That is very true, and the comical nature of it all. I mean, when you're really residing in your true self, when you're really in that state of realization that you are a spiritual being and that you are surrounded and enfolded and encompassed in God, and that there is nothing but love. Uh, so, by human standards, you're in this ecstatic state. And then looking at a world like the world that 2017 presented to us, it really is like a Disney production. It's like Lucasfilms creating all of this chaos, and then we finally arrive at a point where we recognize that, oh, none of it's real. That was just an idle dream.
Yeah, yeah, and I like that idea of the idle dream because if you think about it, what does a car do when it's idling? It's just sitting there, not going anywhere. And our idle dreams haven't really gone anywhere either. So we can have a lot of the good things happen in our dream. We can have a lot of the bad things happen, but it's just the story of duality. And duality is going to have both of those things in it. What we're working with the course is we're actually working on transcending the duality, realizing that this is not our home. As one of my favorite lines in the course says, I am not a body, I am free, for I am still as God created me. And we just really start to move beyond that as a concept, and we start to actually internalize and experience the truth of those words, which is a part of us navigating the sometimes wacky and wild world that we live in a way that basically is smoother and more comfortable. So it actually kind of reminds me of even like playing a video game. When I was a kid, the big video game was Super Mario Brothers when the Nintendos first came out, and it was a great game. I was only ever so good at it, and I thought I was good enough. I was maybe good enough to more or less kind of win the game. Um, I think it was less. I don't know if I ever quite got past that last level. But then I went to college, and one of my friends played. Somehow, someone had this game, and he got on the controller, and I was like, "Wow, that guy's amazing at this game." I don't know. I didn't know anyone had such mad skills on how to do these amazing jumps and tricks and moves. And I was like, "This is like a whole other level." And in a way, I think what we're doing spiritually is we're growing into really all of us are finding our way to this level of mastery. And it might be something that we didn't even know was achievable before, but now we're starting to realize that that's available to us, and it's actually really exciting.
Well, and I think the salient point there is the more we let go, the more mastery we attain. Because, as Jesus gave us that idea in the Bible, in the New Testament, I of myself am nothing but the Father within me. And that's really what we're doing is we're learning how to let go of the ego's attempts to confront the world it has created and allow the Holy Spirit, the presence of God, to redirect us and to take control of situations that we don't even comprehend. We think we know what's going on. But the sad truth is that 99.9% of the time, our beliefs, our perceptions, our understanding is so crippled because we have confined ourselves to this ego identity, which is so completely and totally cut off from awareness and from vision and from understanding that we're like Plato's characters stumbling around in a cave, afraid to approach the light, living in a world of shadows. You're not coming through, Barrett.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
I'm just going to do it through my computer speakers. So.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I really love that, and to combine those two ideas, it's like when I think I'm the one playing the video game, I can only maybe do so much. I can only kind of rely on my own talents and skills. But if I in a sense turn the video game playing over to spirit, over to that divine truth within, all of a sudden new techniques, new tricks kind of come through and are experienced. And in our own way, that's what we're doing in this video game, this virtual reality that we think of as our life. The more that we hold tightly to our control of what's going on, the more limited we are. The more we're actually basically beholden to maybe our own past experiences. And as we release and let go, all of a sudden new things can come to us, and new gameplay may be available as we go forward. So I think it's really fascinating, and I love the idea of it all being this big virtual reality, because that's really what it is. And the more that we can think of it like that, or sort of like the holodeck from Star Trek, it's just really a fascinating idea that points to the fact that everything we think we're experiencing here seems like the truth, but it's not actually the case.
Very true. And the players, that's the one thing that takes the pressure off, because we have so much unintentional as well as intentional condemnation of everybody around us. And once we begin to realize that this is all a script, it's a movie that we have created, it makes it a lot easier to step back from being confrontational with people and condemning their actions, condemning their activities, when 20 minutes later we discover ourselves doing the same thing. So, it's a sad statement that the ego is such a dumb creation. I mean, we really had to impair ourselves on every level in order to take on this identity that is so encapsulated in limitation.
Yeah, yeah, and I know the term mental handicap is not really used that way anymore, but very literally, if you think of those words, we are mentally handicapped, all of us. We are mentally handicapped by believing that we have pulled off this separation from our Creator, that we are somehow separate from the unity, and that we are no longer at one, at home in heaven. And the whole work of the Course, you could say, is lifting that self-imposed handicap that we put on ourselves, and coming into the real state of mind, what is called the capital M mind in the Course, which is a reflection of God, which is that oneness of truth. The way to do that is to acknowledge how afraid of that we are, to look at all the ways that we embrace fear instead of love, that we choose pain instead of joy, that we choose limitation instead of grandeur, and to practice shifting out of that every time we notice, to say, oh wait, this suffering that I'm experiencing is actually something that I have chosen for myself. Now again, that seems insane, and in truth it really is. So what we're doing is we're looking at this insanity, and then we're starting to say, no, I want something different. I want a better way here. And that kind of statement is often the sort of trigger or the opening, the beginning of people's search, as it was for Bill when he said to Helen, there's got to be another way. And Helen said right back to him, well, I'll help you find it. and that was the beginning of letting aside their separate interests and joining in a common goal. And that's basically a theme that's repeated over and over through the course, is how can we find the common goal, which is always our awakening to our truth, and let go of all these false separate goals of kind of stepping on top of someone, or getting our own way at the expense of someone else. So yeah, I don't know, it all fits together so nicely.
That it does. It's remarkable, actually. And the whole process of our awakening is so assured. We don't have to have those or entertain those doubts or fears about whether or not it's going to happen. In reality, it already has happened, and we're just caught in the residue, the after effects of the illusion, the dream life. So, and starting off with a new year here, it's kind of to the point to take a look here at chapter 15, and in section 11, all the way down to the last paragraph. It says, "So will the year begin in joy and freedom. There is much to do, and we have been long delayed. Accept the holy instant as this year is born, and take your place so long left unfulfilled in the great awakening. Make this year different by making it all the same, and let all your relationships be made holy for you. This is our will. Amen." And that's a beautiful prayer, because it really cuts to the chase and gives us a very clear target, which is, basically the differentiation between Judaic law, the Ten Commandments, and then what Jesus came and replaced it with. And he said, you don't need 10 commandments. The first and most important thing is to love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. And the second is to love your neighbor as yourself. So before you can even love your neighbor, you have to get to a place where you can love yourself. And the more you identify with the presence of God, with the Christ within you, the easier that becomes. So with that as our theme and our mission for 2018, I am going to predict that there is going to be another cycle of evolution and revolution as more of the illusion starts to break apart and fracture and show its nothingness to us in every situation in our lives.
Yeah, that is one of the gifts of the craziness, as we were talking on a little bit before we started, is when things get so messed up, when things get so out of control, a part of us says, this can't be true. And that part of us is right. It really isn't true. And it's really good news that it's not the truth. So this is a blessing that we find a sense of happiness with, a sense of peace, a sense of joy, because when we buy into this, when we really think that the things happening out there in the world are literally so, it's depressing. I mean, just look at what's happening in this world. There's starvation, hunger, illness, torture, genocide. I mean, there's a lot of heavy stuff happening out there. And to believe that it's real actually means in some way we think God has something to do with that, right? But the good news is that this is all just a crazy dream. And God doesn't have anything to do with the dream that we're learning to awaken from. God knows our truth and where we really are. And that's what we're coming into, is seeing, okay. And the way to achieve that is actually what you were just saying, Chris. Make this year different by making it all the same. What does that mean? Well, it means that we make this year different than all the other years by choosing love. We make this moment different than all the others by choosing peace. And it really leads right into one of my favorite workbook lessons, which is workbook lesson 34. And it says, I could see peace instead of this. This is a great lesson to take with you as you go through your day and through your week, through your life. And every time you're not at peace, every time you're upset for whatever the reason is, to just come back to this thought, I could see peace instead of this. And what is that saying? It's saying that your way of perceiving and experiencing this situation is a choice. It is a choice. No matter how messed up something is happening in your life, you can find a greater sense of peace by choosing it. And it seems kind of remarkable, but it actually is very empowering. And that's the work of the Course, is continually shifting into a mindset of peace, even when the outer circumstances are not reflecting that. And we all know it doesn't even need to look chaotic outside of us for us to feel chaotic within. So whenever our experience is chaos, whenever our experience is turbulent, that's when this thought really, really helps us the most.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And, one of the things that it's very obvious, although our resistance to this idea is very high. So even though it's right in your face at all times, the only way to live life is to be a conduit of love in every situation, every circumstance, in every relationship, in every thought, really, that you have. It has to be powered by love and identifiable as love. And that's what we're being told as far as this idea of making it all the same. We're making our response to everything we encounter the same. So, as easy as it would be to get angry with people around you, with circumstances that you're having to deal with, if you can back off and breathe deeply and step back into the scene as a way of bringing love into the situation, you'll find that you can rectify almost every issue that you've got going on in your life effortlessly, because that's what love does. Love ultimately purifies and transforms everything that you're encountering. So if you can make your one response to life that of love, then everything else will fall into place.
Yeah, what comes to mind is that a book I read, Deepak Chopra wrote, I think a couple books. He wrote one for Buddha, one for Jesus, basically telling the story of their lives as though it were in sort of novel format. So writing out the stories and putting it all together into one bigger picture. So it's hard to know exactly what's fact and what's not, but I read his description of Buddha's life, and I was struck by a scene very much like that, where Buddha is walking into a battlefield, a literal battlefield, and his disciple is with him, and his disciple is maybe walking ahead, so he's not really looking at Buddha. But as they're walking through this battlefield, he turns his head from side to side, and he sees soldiers dropping their swords, and one by one, he's like amazed, like, what's happening here? Well, and he turns around, and all of a sudden, Buddha is like this beam of light. And so all the soldiers are sort of like, stunned, and they're dropping their swords. But the real message here for me was that we can walk through the battlefields in our life with a sense of joy, with that sense of love. And we don't know how that love is going to necessarily play out. I mean, this is sort of a dramatic retelling of the story. Maybe people will put their swords down, but at the very least, we can experience peace in the midst of the circumstance, and that makes all the difference. I actually heard another story sort of like this that was an experience that Wayne Dyer had, where he's kind of a runner, so he would just go running wherever he was, and at some point, I don't know if he was in a different locale than he was used to, but he ran and he was running through an area that was kind of rough. And he basically came upon groups of young people, young men who were it was pretty clear something was happening, and there was some sort of fight that was brewing. So what does Wayne do? He like walks right into the middle of this, smiling and like humming a little song or something like that. And somehow it turns the whole dynamic around. Like people are, instead of like, being angry at each other, that all of a sudden they're like, amused and teasing and mocking Wayne. And it basically just dissipates whatever this angry energy that was building, and he just goes on his merry way. So it's like you never know exactly what's going to happen, but remarkable things may be the outcome.
I think definitely that can be the the conditions of your existence. It's like that. Who was that masked man, Kimosabe? It's the person, instead of bearing silver bullets, comes through with perhaps a silver glint in his smile, and brings a little joy into places where there is stress and fear. And that really is, as intimidating as it may sound, that really is our mission in life, is to arrive at that point where we become fearless enough to encounter situations unabashedly, and to not entertain any belief in the limitations and the restrictions that the material world is presenting to us. So that's a very good theme to carry in the back of your mind, and until you're ready to actually fully engage in that kind of thing, I wouldn't recommend going to the south side of Chicago and jumping out of your car in the middle of a gang war or anything like that. But maybe seeing people that are arguing around the water cooler in the workplace, you can introduce those ideas and start making progress, start advancing. And that's what 2018, I think, is going to be, a year of advancing, simply because we're coming to that point where we're gaining confidence in the truth as we are able to comprehend it.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, definitely don't put yourself in a position of danger just to try to prove a point around any of this. I 100% endorse, not doing anything that sort of belies common sense. And these sorts of things can happen on, smaller scales too. I'll share a story from my own family where my father always can be a little persnickety about where he sits when we go to a restaurant. Very particular, I guess, is a better word for it. And he can also sometimes give the servers a little bit of, a hard time with his requests and, jokes and things that he makes, which really almost always gets under my sister's skin. So one time the family was all out to dinner, and the same thing was happening as usual, where my dad was making some silly comments or requests, and my sister was really getting upset. She's like, she said to Dad, that is really inappropriate. And so as this is going on, I can feel the tension rising in myself, right? I can feel my tension of like, okay, well, Nikki, just let Dad be who he is, or Dad, why do you have to do that? All these judgments. And I started practicing the course at this point, so I kind of shifted within, and I said, what is my purpose here? My purpose is to heal my own tension and anxiety about this. So I did my best to do that. And then all of a sudden, I just said this. When my sister said, Dad, that is so inappropriate, I said, well, it's not as inappropriate as if he was touching himself. And so I said that. Dad kind of like went pale. My sister started cracking up. It totally diffused the situation. All the animosity was gone. And we went on with our meal. So,
well, that is kind of a sudden jolt to a prankster, I would imagine. He was probably reeling for the next 24 hours around that one. But it definitely is, an immediate cure for a situation that could have just continued to escalate and made everybody miserable for the rest of the day.
Yeah, and I just shared that as an example of, it doesn't always have to be a quote unquote big deal. A lot of times shifting within, all of a sudden, like I didn't plan this, it just sort of came out of my mouth. But when I shifted into a place of peace within, then in a way I was able to be used as that vessel for something lighter and more joyful to come through. And we all have those opportunities in our days and in our relationships. So when you notice that anxiety creeping up in you as you go through your day, remember that there's another way to be. And who knows what might come from it. It might be something totally that you wouldn't have foreseen. And it could be really beautiful.
Absolutely. That's the amazing thing, is that when you open yourself up to the Holy Spirit and you're willing to participate on a different level, all of a sudden magic does seem to be the theme of the day. Things become very magical and very light and filled with joy, as opposed to the oppressive nature of that mummy of self that we carry around with us when we're going from lifetime to lifetime.
It's true. Yeah. Yeah. There's a point in the text, I think, where Jesus describes our body as a wall of flesh around the mind. Like, ooh, that's pretty graphic, but it really gets the message across.
Yes. And so we've got 3 days before the big event, the new year, arrives. I am putting out a special prayer that on New Year's Day, the weather will shift and we will become very tropical. It will be 72 degrees and a light breeze from the west, and that will prevail throughout the entire year.
Yeah, yeah. May everyone feel peace in their hearts as you go through 2018 and beyond. Let this be a time of joy and really thanksgiving as we step into a new year. It's a new opportunity for us to know the fullness of the love within. So I wholeheartedly agree with you, Chris. That's beautiful.
Well, it was a joy, as this is number 134, so we've got
Ooh.
quite a few episodes. They're posted on YouTube if people are interested. There's a lot to peruse, and it has been a joy through these last couple of years exploring the course and looking forward to not only more dialogue here in cyberspace, but also more live events as we advance into 2018.
I look forward to that too. It's been really fun doing this with you, Chris, and I know there's a lot more fun in store.
Absolutely. Well, you have a great day. Stay warm, and I'll see you next year.
All right, sounds good. Yep, have fun ringing in the new year.
Absolutely. Bye.
All right, bye.